Hey everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Glue Stick, and as promised, time to dive back into dragons, and I have some requests for gem dragons, many requests for gem dragons, as these dragons stem from an article in Dragon Magazine number 37 by Arthur W. Collins back in 1980. Feel free to slot them into any lore of your game how you see fit, but I have a suggestion for how to use them in 5th edition. I'll get to that later. Gem dragons are the neutral dragons. They are not ruled by Bahamut or Tiamat, nor were they created by either of those dragon gods. They originated in the time of Io, the original dragon god. So why are there not more of them? Well, they're smaller and slower than the metallic and chromatic dragons. They are less likely to be involved in dramatic events. They don't bother anyone else. And if everyone just leaves them alone, they dwell in remote areas. More often than not, they have well-established lairs in the elemental chaos, and they do have a leader, the only known one of his kind and only known ruby dragon. We'll get more on him later. There are 6 types of gem dragons. They are the Amethyst, the Crystal, the Emerald, the Ruby, the Sapphire, and the Topaz. In later editions of the game, they came up with a Obsidian dragon as well. You can include that if you wish, but I'm not going to talk about them today. I will talk about them in order of their size and power. As a rule, the gem dragons, one could also call them the neutral dragons, are reclusive and not at all keen on unexpected visitors. They may be described as curious, highly intelligent, but they are not gregarious. They simply don't seek the company of other creatures unless they have some sort of reason to do so. When they're encountered, while they may seem talkative and engaging, you're actually in serious trouble and need to be on your guard. I'll talk about exactly why later on in this episode. Least of their kind, but one of the most splendid, is the crystal dragon. They grow to an adult size of only 12 feet long, still large enough to tear a man to shreds though, if you consider like Komodo dragons and things, they're pretty fearsome, and crocodiles. They are translucent and dazzle in the light of the sun so brightly they are difficult to look at directly. While not that intelligent by the standard of gem dragons, they are exceptionally intelligent compared to a human. They prefer to live high in alpine regions, mountain crags, far above the domain of other creatures. In the Forgotten Realms, they live far into the icy northern regions, building castles of snow and ice, avoiding falling victim to frost giant raids or becoming slaves of cloud giants. They're not terribly responsible. One could almost call them happy-go-lucky, except they're not that happy whenever humanoids turn up to pester them. And they're not very active during the day, preferring to spend their evenings laying down and gazing up at the stars. They have a breath weapon of intense light, a dazzling cloud actually, as bright as the sun and visible for miles, even during daytime, which is only large enough to engulf about 4 medium-sized creatures, but they'll be blinded for 1d6 minutes. That's potentially 60 combat rounds with the blinded condition. However, it is so bright, it's a radiated effect so that any creatures within 60 feet of the cloud must make a dexterity saving throw to avoid looking at it, or they get disadvantage on their attack rolls thanks to having a big black spot in the centre of their vision for 1d6 rounds. The save DC is 13, but creatures sensitive to daylight will roll with disadvantage. The Crystal Dragon is a challenge rating 3. It has +6 to attack rolls, does 6 damage on a claw attack, 10 points of damage on a bite attack. Its armor class is 15 and has, let's see, challenge rating, those hit points would be probably, what did I say, challenge rating? Probably about 100, maybe 80. So yeah, they're not that tough. Like most of the gem dragons, it cannot polymorph unless by spell magic, but it can blink teleport, usually 6 times per day, taking the form, and it basically takes its movement speed and blink teleports that distance. In combat, this ability has a chance to recharge on a roll of 5 or 6 on a 6-sided dice. Slightly larger, the Topaz dragon is 15 feet long and prefers to dwell in coastal regions. However, they don't like to get wet and have a breath weapon that dehydrates anything it contacts. So how could you handle this as an attack in 5th edition D&D? Well, it's a very, very nasty attack that is severely debilitating as well as damaging. I'd put this up there as one of the top 5 area ranged attacks in the game, and a very good reason to be particularly respectful of the Topaz dragon. This is tricky because Topaz dragons are selfish, deliberately unfriendly, and difficult to deal with. They generally don't like company of other beings that they consider to be idiots, and as they are exceptionally intelligent, this includes most other beings. The list of things they can't stand about other intelligent beings is also a mile long. The breath weapon destroys 3 cubic feet of liquid per hit point that the dragon has, leaving only dry material behind. So with an average of, say, 68 hit points, on like even a small, that would be 204 feet of cubic water gone. Cubic feet of water just vanishes, leaving behind salt and dry fish. When that cone of water destruction hits a living target, they must immediately make a Constitution saving throw at difficulty class 14. If they manage to save against that, they take 1 level of exhaustion and half damage. But it will also stop any creature not immune to the effect in their tracks from approaching any closer to the next turn, because it really hurts. Those who take the full brunt of the dehydration breath weapon gain 2 levels of exhaustion instantly and take 60 points of damage. The exhaustion is taking the place of strength drain from earlier editions. This form of exhaustion is very hard to recover from. One doesn't just bounce back after a short rest. It takes a long rest to recover each level of exhaustion. Also, keep in mind that 6 levels of exhaustion is deadly. It'll kill you. Topaz dragons spend a lot of time in the elemental chaos, but when on worlds in the primaterial plane, they prefer remote, temperate islands and coastal areas. They always keep their lair bone dry, even though it's usually constructed below the waterline, and like all gem dragons, prefer to keep their hoard stocked with precious gems and artistic objects of great beauty and value. But gem dragons are well named. They really love gems. In appearance, the Topaz dragon ranges from a dull yellow to a brilliantly faceted yellow gleam in the noonday sun. They enjoy the coastal environment but don't swim for fun. They're not really water fans. They mainly eat dry fish, understandably. They have a challenge rating of 4, armor class of 16. They're plus 7 to hit with attacks. Their claw and bite attacks are not so fearsome, with a bite that's comparable to a young green dragon, really. Emerald dragons are usually quite visually spectacular dragons. As they age, their scales take on a shimmering property with every shade of green represented. This allows the dragon to almost hypnotically lull onlookers into a false sense of the dragon's true distance from them as they coil and move around. They're well practiced at it, and the visitors won't have any clue of the threat that they're under. By constantly shifting and flexing, the dragon, if it decides to attack, almost always does so with surprise after 4 rounds of conversation, gaining advantage on attack rolls in the first round. All gem dragons have an innate hypnotic power anyway, partly due to their intelligence, and I'll talk about that later, but the emerald dragons are particularly prone to taking a precautionary dominant role in any encounter due to their natural paranoia. They prefer to keep the upper hand even if they don't intend to be overtly aggressive. They're also driven to know as much as they can about their environment and who's in it. This leads them to gaining superior records on history and geography. They have local knowledge better than most sages, and although they prefer to lair in extinct volcanic ranges, jungle and mire-filled ancient caldera cones, their lairs are very hard to find and trapped with all kinds of alarms that alert the dragon to interlopers. They have a small retinue of servants that the dragon controls, not trusts. They don't trust anyone. And the emerald dragon will only rarely emerge from concealment, preferring to observe and interact strictly telepathically. Another reason why they can attack with advantage. All gem dragons have a much higher chance of psychic ability than the majority of other dragons. They usually have some basic abilities such as telepathic communication, but they have all sorts of spell-like abilities such as invisibility, zone of truth, shield, enhance ability, and so forth. Plus, all gem dragons have the natural ability to charm other beings simply by conversing with them. Gem dragons excel at drawing others into a conversation and use it to implant a suggestion, the same as a spell. If a creature makes a save against the effect, they will be immune to further attempts by the dragon for the next 24 hours. But this ability is hard to detect. It's not a spell effect, but it does count as a form of charm attack, just like the spell. So they can implant a small spoken suggestion that the other creature must follow. With a challenge rating of 5, the Emerald Dragon has a save range DC of 15, its breath weapon and charm ability and psychic powers. They have a form of sonic vibration breath attack, which will knock any creature that fails a saving throw unconscious for 1d6 minutes. Those who manage to resist the vibration are still deafened for 1d6 minutes. The dragon has an armor class of 17 and about 140 hit points, still quite low for a dragon. Attack bonus of +8, quite formidable physical damage from this bite and claw attacks. A bite does 16 points of damage, claws do about 12 points of damage each. Also, they don't need to roll to recharge their breath attack, they can use it as often as they want. Emerald dragons normally manifest psychic powers that allow them to remotely spy on places as well as augment their ability to charm and disable others. Moving on, sapphire dragons, particularly at a young age, may be mistaken for blue dragons in appearance, but their horns are different and they're found in very different environments, as they prefer to lair deep underground, well away from most other creatures. They are thoroughly antisocial, reclusive, and very territorial. They regard almost all other underground races as their enemies and hate having other dragons lairing anywhere near them. Even if they're not physically powerful enough to fight them off and drive them out or kill them, they will use every resource to rid their domain of their rivals. Those that dwell in the elemental chaos are also fond of remote locations, but again typically lair deep inside massive cavern systems, in the earth areas for instance. Sapphire dragon adults reach 24 feet long and have a fearsome breath weapon that takes the stunning sonic vibration of the emerald dragon and raises the bar to turn it into a sonic disintegration beam. This beam is capable of destroying as many hit points of material, living or dead, in its 30-foot long, 5-foot wide path as the dragon has hit points. This means an adult sapphire dragon, CR6 creature, can blast about 150 hit points worth of rock, armor, weapons, flesh and bone in front of it. My suggestion would be the DC would be a DC 15 saving throw for half damage. And if a living target fails, the first in line takes 60 damage, the next in line takes 50, and the next takes 40 damage, if you imagine that they're absorbing the disintegration in the line. Armor and equipment soak up the damage first, though, and it's up to the DM to adjudicate exactly how this works out. But it's not unheard of, and kind of the point, for an adventurer to survive, but with the clothing and items blasted right off their traumatized body. They may well want to keep it, you may want to keep it simple and just do 66 plus 10 damage to everything hit by the sonic beam, save for half damage, and of course adjudicate what items get blown off the person. It may actually destroy magical items this way too if they're made of delicate materials. Sapphire dragons and their next of kin, the Amethyst dragon, are classed as genius level intellect. They are masterminds, brilliant thinkers, extremely good at piecing together information from gathered facts. They have perfect recall, exceptional tactical skill, and there are very few problems that they can't ponder for a moment and then solve. Amethyst dragons are CR8, 30 feet long, lavender hued, and prefer to dwell in remote, cool highland tarns or other rocky, interesting landscapes. They spend a fair amount of their time on the move though, and so pick their permanent lairs very carefully, as they need to remain concealed and impregnable while the dragon is away for whatever length of time. Why are they away? Well, they're a regal breed, well known for their unbiased attitude, such that they are capable of acting as intermediaries between warring dragons and sometimes humanoid populations. They have a more crystalline appearance than the other gem dragons, and their breath weapon is another sonic attack, except this time it's similar to the dreadful wailing shriek of a banshee. Each creature that is not another Amethyst dragon, construct or undead, that hears the wail within 30 feet of the dragon must make a constitution saving throw versus DC 16 or immediately drop to 0 hit points. Those who save take a blistering 25 points of damage instead, and this is psychic damage. Amethyst dragons almost always have potent psychic powers, and they have a knack for locating objects, discerning the truth, and erasing the memories of others. Who knows, perhaps you encountered one before, but you just don't recall the occasion. Last, the ruler of the other crystal dragons, located in a flying citadel very high up in the atmosphere, or sometimes flying through the wide open plane of air, is Sardor, the ruby dragon. He rules through a thane of each of the dragon lineages: Hrodel, the crystal dragon, Tithonus, the topaz dragon, Smargad, the emerald dragon, Charsima, the sapphire dragon, and Eleithilithos, the amethyst dragon. Each of the Thanes is an ancient dragon in their own right, and each has a different set of psychic abilities. If I refer back to the original article, I can tell you what they are. So, Hrodel, the female crystal dragon, has the psychic disciplines of empathy and invisibility. Tithonus, the male Topaz dragons, has the disciplines of clairaudience, clairvoyance, and sensitivity to psychic impressions. Smargad, the male Emerald dragon, has the disciplines of domination, hypnosis, and teleportation. Charsema, the female Sapphire dragon, has the disciplines of cell adjustment, ESP, suspended animation, and etherealness. And Eleithilethos, the male Amethyst dragon, has the disciplines of detection of good and evil, detection of magic, object reading, energy control, and dimension walk. Occasionally, these dragons will accompany Sardor on an excursion down to the surface of the material plane or to some other plane of existence. And if encountered, they may actually reward you for your deeds in life that they've observed. Otherwise, of course, you're in serious trouble. But they're quite well known for granting boons of those they encounter. They're magnanimous, really. All of Sardor's Thanes are huge ancient dragons, and it must be remembered that Sardor and company are a stay-at-home lot. They don't venture out unless they've got some good reason for going out. Sardor has 2 breath weapons. One of them is similar to the dazzling cloud of the crystal dragon, and the other is similar to the banshee shriek of the amethyst dragon. He's got a ruddy appearance, but he's not a very brilliant red dragon, but he's pretty good looking anyway. Just by the by. So he's Prince of the Neutral Dragons. He's a brilliant conversationalist and raconteur with a genius level intellect. He's 36 feet long and So how would I use the gem dragons in my campaign? First and foremost, these dragons predate the Chromatic and Metallic dragons. Also, they have potent psychic powers, so it's not unreasonable to theorize that Io created these dragons to defend the primaterial universe from the Far Realm, the psychic incursion. Perhaps the original incursion of the Far Realm, when the crystal god known as the Living Gate was shattered, with the genesis point for this species of dragon is in essence the archetype for all subsequent dragons. Who knows what depth to add to them, eh? You could, they're not just aloof and uninvolved beings who dwell in remote areas. They are actually concerned with things that normal mortal beings had best stay very far away from. They are part of the defense of the natural planes from the destructive invasion of aberrations from nightmare dimensions. Your character might be bothering a tribe of flumps, and all of a sudden an obsidian dragon shows up out of nowhere. The DM collects all the character sheets, spends a few minutes reading over them and taking time to consider all the aspects, and then in a few short sentences from the dragon, the player characters are most likely working for the dragon now, and the flumps go on their merry way, and the dragon has the player characters all figured out, wrapped around its little finger. They're that smart. It's always very intimidating when the DM says, please hand me all of your character sheets. The dragon is privy to all of the information on here because it's smarter than you. If you have set up an encounter with a gem dragon, you will know you are playing them right when the players are looking at others and saying, what? Wait, what's going on here? If they get into combat with a gem dragon without cause, they should spend the first few rounds frantically scrambling to figure out just what sort of madness is going on. As they are blinded, their equipment's disintegrated, they get dehydrated or hit with a sonic stun attack. These dragons may be smaller and physically weaker than their kin, but they are powerful in other ways not to be underestimated, like any dragon. You may encounter them in the middle of nowhere or very close to a dire aberration threat. Either way, they're not normally immediately hostile, and with some deft diplomacy, you might just find yourself an ally in a sticky situation. So that's Gem Dragons. Thank you very much for the suggestion. They're quite a fun breed and good fun to research. I'll be back again on the weekend with another video. Thanks everybody.